So welcome to this interview with Vania Phitidis. Vania is an intuitive eating counselor and a mindful eating teacher. She lives in the UK, in the Sussex countryside, very close to where Winnie the Pooh was created. She has participated for a few years in the World Mindful Eating Month, and last year she jumped into the creation team. And this year, she's been the wonderful voice and some of the meditations that we shared. So if you want to find out more about Vania, you can see her work going into her webpage, which is Peaceful Eating Co. UK. In February, she's launching a 12-year course, How to Live a Life of Peace with Food. So Vania, welcome to this interview. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here, Cuca. It's really wonderful to be here with you and everyone.
Yeah, and it has been, I have to say, it has been really wonderful to get to know Vania closer this year while working on all this beautiful content that they have developed. So Vania, this year the theme is cultivating the mindful eating practice, planting the seeds of self-compassion. Can you share with us what that means for you?
Well, the way that I have made sense of this, well, let me start from my entry point into mindful eating. When I came to the practice of mindful eating, the idea of self-compassion wasn't actually really there for me. It was first practicing mindful eating as a way for me to calm down around food, as a way for me to become more present with my experience of eating and my experience of being in my own body. And, you know, when we have mindfulness without self-compassion or without compassion practice, it can be quite a detached experience where, you know, it could be quite clinical, you know, if you don't have that that warmth, that sense of caring, that kindness coming with it. And that's how it was for me in the beginning, because I was still quite fixated. In the beginning, I was still using mindful eating as a way to try to fix my eating behavior rather than as a way for me to simply be with myself and my eating experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes all the sense. Yeah, so it was really what it kind of made the connection, the heart connection with your practice.
Sorry, you go on.
I found myself as well that self-compassion was key to really get into working with the experience and the suffering that it was behind the my eating experience before that.
And I think that the way that I approached it in the beginning, mindful eating, before I took the training and became more involved, but right in the beginning when I first came across mindfulness and mindful eating, as I said a minute or two ago, it was seen for me as a modality to try to fix a problem. And I think underneath that was really a root of self-hate. You know, it was comes from a root of, I am a problem, my eating is a problem, the way that I am, my body is a problem that needs to be fixed, resolved, sorted out so that I can be a better person, you know, so that I can approve of myself more. And that's not what mindfulness or mindful eating is actually about, but that's the mentality that I came to it with. And it went on like that for a while, actually. And then as a separate thing, actually, I started to read about self-compassion. I read Tara Brach's Radical Acceptance, Kristen Neff's book, And I did a workshop with her in London as well. And just slowly over time, my eyes and my heart, I think, got opened to the value of self-compassion. And then I began to see how the way that I'd been approaching mindful eating had its root in self-hate, and actually self-compassion has its roots in love.
Mm.
And that's such a different experience qualitatively, you know, it's got such a different quality to the approach. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense. But what you're saying is very interesting, because you're talking about a path.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a cultivation, basically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is not something, a quick fix. This is not something that you do 1 week course, or, you know, read a book and suddenly it gets fixed. It's just a self-discovery path, isn't it? Whereas, you know, a path of life, basically. Whereas when we go into diet, you know, we basically want to fix something, and it has to be done by a certain time, and that's it. And this is a false interpretation of how things work with ourselves and our bodies as well, you know?
And we can approach mindful eating with a diet mentality, right? And I think what self-compassion does is it brings in a sense of openness, a sense of, as you say, journeying, self-discovery, not at all about fixing. It's more about tending to ourselves in any moment, you know, moment to moment. How can we tend to ourselves? How can we be kind to ourselves? What do we need? Not in order to fix ourselves, but in order to help ourselves, in order to support ourselves. And I think one of the things that compassion does is it inclines ourselves towards the other who is suffering, or ourselves if we're the one who's suffering. It's a way of not a way of, naturally what it does is it moves us towards the
Embracing, yeah.
suffering one. Yes, exactly.
Mm.
The
Yeah,
suffering one.
that's what Pema Chodron usually says, you know,
Mm.
that we're not here to fix ourselves, but to embrace ourselves as a whole, perfect beings. Mm.
I
Mm.
think what compassion does is the practice of it helps us see that there isn't anything that needs to be fixed. We are
Mm.
already whole and worthy and lovable, just as we are, and we're just suffering in this moment.
Mm.
And how can we just tend to that in a warm way, rather than, you know, chasing after ourselves with a stick, trying to make ourselves better people.
Mm. Mm. Yes. So, Vania, is there one reading or meditation or course or retreat or video, whatever, or speaker that that you go back to when you need to nurture your seeds of self-compassion?
Mm-hmm. I do, and you know, it's not a, you know, it's a really, really simple thing, and it's just this. It's when I notice I'm suffering, I just put a hand on my heart, or on my arm, you know, give myself a gentle stroke, you know,
Mm-hmm.
gentle caress in some way. And I learned this through Krista Neff, and what I remember her saying about it is, there are two things. The one is a more kind of scientific thing, which is actually doing this produces oxytocin, which is a hormone neurotransmitter that is to do with bonding and belonging. And so it's a way of reaffirming to yourself that you belong to yourself, if as well as to everything and everyone else, but reaffirming to yourself that you belong here. And then the other is, it's actually an action. It's not there's a thought in there as well, but there's an action. And I think when we start to take an action towards something, we're already creating a bit of momentum in a direction that we want to be going towards. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense. How interesting the way that you put it, because you're already trying to change the course of the things, but just taking care of yourself.
Exactly. And so that just to me is a really, really, really simple thing that I do, and I just find it's really helpful. And it's just about in this moment, right? It takes 5 seconds. It's so powerful.
They say the most difficult thing about meditating is reminding yourself that you have to, that you want to meditate, remembering that you want to meditate.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Vania. It has been a real pleasure to meet with you today, and it has been a real pleasure to share this World Mindful Eating Month path with you.
Oh, thank you, Cuca. It's been wonderful being alongside you and the rest of the people, really. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Have a very good year and take very compassionate care of yourself.
Thank you, and you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.